Hey there YouTube fans, AC Productions here, and today I'm going to be showing you on how to install frame sliders. Now I normally post with the video on who asked me a question and stuff like that, but because so many of you guys wanted me to do something like that, sorry it's been taking me so long, but I was hoping to get a bike that didn't have frame sliders for me to do a video on how to do it, that I could do it fresh. But because no video has come through my shop to actually do the video, I'm just going to remove mine, reinstall them, but at the process to show you on how to do them. Now the reason also that I did not do a video when I installed my frame sliders is because back then when I first got the bike I didn't have my YouTube channel, so I didn't do the video at that time because I didn't have a channel, so I didn't do the video. But today I'll be showing you on how to install these frame sliders. Now if you're wondering what kind of frame sliders these are called no cut. Now the meaning of no cut means that you do not have to cut into the fairing to install these kind of frame sliders. Now these frame sliders are made by Sato Racing and they're a bit on the pricey side. Now the reason I didn't go with cheap eBay ones is because they're cheap, and I wanted good quality because they are meant to, you know, when you do a low slider, if you drop your bike, I wanted at least really good quality on the frame sliders, because if I got cheap, who knows, maybe they would get damaged a lot more and may not perform as good as a more pricier one. And when they're a little bit more pricier, that means they're made with better quality material. And as you could see already, I already kind of dropped my bike a few times and I did have a few accidents, and so far these have held up fantastic. No bends. It didn't bend the frame like a lot of people say that don't get frame sliders because if you crash, it could bend the frame of your bike, which is not true. If you do get the cheaper brand, yes, that could or maybe happen that when you do crash that it can bend the frame or bend the frame slider or whatnot, but when you get good quality, you'll get good quality results. So far these have held on very well. Now there is another style of frame sliders that you can get, and they're called cut. Now when you get the cut ones, these actually will extend out over here, you know, so there'll be more of a bracket that goes in further, and therefore you're going to have to measure on where it is. Then you have to cut a hole into your fairing, and then you're going to have to screw this. You have to put the bracket in, and then you have to screw this part in there. Now the reason I didn't get the cut ones is because even though they extend out further out here, which they probably will protect over here, I just didn't want to make a hole into the fairing. And the second would be if I were ever need to remove my fairings, that means I would have to remove the frame slider, take the bolt out, and then take that out, and then, you know, take out the fairing. It's just a lot of work, and for me, I didn't want to go through that. So having no cut, I think it's better because the bracket that these no cut frame sliders go on is shorter. I believe that shorter is better because the bracket will be a lot stronger compared to it being a lot longer, and there could be some weak spots. So my personal preference, I would go with no cut, as you could see. But, you know, I'll have links in the description below for no cut and cut. And I'll try to get a link for this particular brand. They also have ones that are for racing, I believe, I think they're called. So they have two styles. One is this one, which is for street use, which is a little bit more higher up. And then they got ones that sit just a little bit lower. And I believe that they call that for racing if you take your bike to the track or something. But I'll try to get links for that. They're a little bit hard to get links for this particular brand, but I'll try to do my best and put them in the description below for this particular brand and for other brands like Woodcraft. And if you are in a pinch or in a bind, but you do want a little bit of protection for the time being, I will have some eBay or Amazon brand frame sliders and links in the description below. So that will get you at least started on having some protection. So some protection is better than no protection. Okay, you're gonna need a 4mm Allen key if you have something like that, or if you have something with a ratchet and little handle, that works good too. Next, you're going to need a 8mm Allen key socket. I have an extension on this one because I'll be using a 1/2" torque wrench. So you need one like this. And then lastly, you're going to need a foot-pound torque wrench to tighten down the bolts. And also if you have a breaker bar or a regular style ratchet, to loosen the bolts from your engine, because these are going to go to the engine block of the R3. Almost forgot to mention, you're also going to need a 10mm socket. Okay, so after you remove the screw over here, next you're going to have to remove is this plastic piece, because you also have to get to the piece over here. So go ahead and remove your screw over here, and then your one screw over here. Once you remove this piece, and you get the screw off of here, there is a bolt back here which uses a 10mm for the socket. Then we're going to go ahead, and that bolt is located here, and I'll show you that in a second. Okay, so now that you remove that piece over there, got the screw out over here, and if you look down there, there is your 10mm bolt that you need to remove. So once you remove that, that's going to give you a little bit of leeway to actually move this plastic a little bit, pretty much up a little bit. You may also need to remove this little plastic screw here, and we'll see what we could do after that. That's just a small little Phillips. Just turn it a little bit and take the little plastic piece off, and that should give us enough leeway to actually move this plastic just up a little bit to get to the bolt that's located down here. Okay, so now the two bolts that you're going to need to remove is going to be these two right here. This one and this one. These are the two bolts that you're going to need to remove to put these no-cut frame sliders in. So go ahead and use your 8mm socket to remove those. Okay, so after you remove those two bolts, here is your frame slider. Now note that I've already put these and installed these before, so just note that when you get them, this bracket and these pieces are actually going to be separate from each other, and it's pretty easy to install. They'll come with instructions on how to do so, but you'll have a bolt, as you could see inside there on the frame slider, and then you're going to have this metal piece here. So this is going to be for the right side, and you'll have the bracket here. So you'll look at this, and then what you want to do is you're going to put this metal piece here, put the puck or this the frame slider onto this piece. You're going to notice that this piece is going to be larger, and then it's going to taper to a smaller end. So you want to make sure that the larger end is behind or at the back of the slider. So put the smaller end like so, and then put the slider on the bigger end. Then you're going to slide the bolt with the spacer. This is how it looks like on the inside right there. Alright, so before we get to that, let's get our bolt, which is right here. Let's get our spacer or our washer, slide that through, put it through your frame slider. Should come out to the other end. Now get this piece, is also aluminum, it's hollow. Okay, so we want to make sure it's actually tapered. So there's one end that's bigger and one end that's smaller. As you can see, here's the bigger end, here's the smaller end. You want to make sure that the bigger end goes to the back of the frame slider. Go ahead and slide that through. Alright, so then you got your bracket for your frame slider. Looks like that. Now pretty much this piece is going to go towards the end right over here on that side. But before we do that, let's go ahead and put a little bit of thread lock on the ends of the bolt. So let's go ahead and do that. You want to make sure you do this for both of them. Unfortunately, I was not able to show you that on the other one, but you want to make sure when you watch this video that you do it for both ends. So once you put a little bit of thread lock, you go ahead and thread that in. Well, you can. I'm putting my finger through it over here just to kind of grab a little bit, and once you feel it grab a little bit, go ahead, get your tool and tighten it down as much as you can. You're not going to be able to tighten it down all the way, not until you get the bracket on the bike. Okay, now that you've removed your bolts from your location right here, now don't worry, removing those two bolts are not going to drop your engine. Not unless you remove this last bolt. Now that bolt is holding down your engine, as you can see in the back. The other part is just holding on to really nothing. There is nothing actually supporting on those bolts. It's almost like the R3 was made for you to have frame sliders anyway. So your main engine bolt is actually this one right here. Alright, so now that you removed your bolts, now would be, oh yeah, and I also forgot to mention to actually put some Loctite on your bolts. So let me go ahead and get that Loctite. Okay, so now Loctite that you want to use will be the blue one. So you want to make sure you use blue Loctite on the bolts. Okay, so let's go ahead and let's put a little bit of Loctite on the threads of the bolts. It doesn't have to be a lot, just enough to coat the threads. Okay, you got one, and then we'll go ahead and put it there. Alright, so now that we got the thread lock on both of the bolts, now we're going to put grab your frame slider and go ahead and put the bolts in through here. So one here and one over here. Now you're going to notice on your frame slider that you have a little groove here. Now that's to accommodate your engine bolt. Alright, so now let's go to the bike. Now that I think about it, I'm just going to start with one, and then I'm going to go ahead and put the other bolt in. So right now I'm just going to start with this bolt here. So like I said, you got that little notch or this groove over here. That's to accommodate the engine bolt here. Just going to go ahead and get this in there. So you have to move your plastics just so you make sure you could get your bolt in place. Once you get it in place, take your time on actually setting it in. You can see it's a little difficult here, but make sure you do not cross thread your bolts. That's going to be a major #1 thing to do. If you feel that the bolt is too tight, once you started to thread it in, take it out right away and realign the bolt. You want to 100% make sure that you do not cross thread onto this bracket, because if you do that, you're going to need to re-tap the bracket here and re-thread it, and that's going to be a major pain in the butt. So you want to make sure you do it the right way the first time, and just make sure that as you're threading, putting the bolt in, it goes in smoothly and you're able to hand tighten it for the most part, almost all the way until it stops. Alright, so I'm not going to do it in all the way because I still need to put the other bolt in. I got to make sure that this is loose enough so I have room to adjust the nut. Alright, so next I'm going to go ahead and grab the other bolts, move the plastic, and make sure that I get the other bolt in its place. Actually, I'm going to move the camera a little bit on the other view so you can get a better view of what I'm doing, maybe this way. Okay, see what best I can do. So what am I doing? I'm moving this plastic plus this plastic up here, moving it up and getting the bolt in. And like I said, you want to make sure that the bolt goes in smooth without any tension. If you do feel tension, go ahead and unscrew it and put it back in. You definitely don't want any tension right away. So at this point, I'm going to go ahead and just finger tighten it all the way until it stops, and then we'll get the tool and I'll show you what to do next. Okay, once you get these hand tightened, and then you use the tool just to tighten them as much as you could, now we're going to go ahead and we're going to get our torque wrench. We're going to put our socket on and we're going to tighten down the bolts to 40 foot-pounds. So let's go ahead and do that. Get our extension with the tool or the Allen key, and then we're going to go ahead and tighten down the 2 bolts at 40 foot-pounds. Okay, so if you want to see how that looks like, as you can see, here's my torque wrench, here's the extension bar, and my 8mm Allen key socket, and then we're going to go ahead to go all the way to 40 foot-pounds. Alright, once you get to 40 foot-pounds, go ahead and tighten down the other bolt. Okay, after you get both of these bolts torqued down at 40 foot-pounds, now you could go ahead and tighten on the bolt down here in the middle, and that one could probably be set to 10 to 15 foot-pounds. It doesn't have to be that extremely tight, so I would say 10 to 20 at the most, but 10 to 15 foot-pounds on the bolt that's in here is good enough to get that tightened onto the bracket. But 40 foot-pounds for sure on these 2 bolts that go onto the engine block mounting bracket. Alright, so now let's go to the other side and let me show you what to do on the other side, which is almost pretty much the exact same thing what you did on the right side, just that the frame slider is just a little bit different in length. On this side it's a lot longer, on the other side it's a little bit shorter, but the bolts and everything is pretty much the same. Okay, and at this point go ahead and put all your plastics and everything back in place. So go ahead and put your 10mm bolt through here, put your screw in over here, put your triangle piece, and don't forget the little plastic screw that goes here, your plastic tab I'd say. So once you get everything all put back together here, then we'll go to the other side and do the same thing. Okay, so now we're on the left side of the bike, and it'll be pretty much the same thing. If you look right in here, right where the Z pillar is, you have a bolt over here and a bolt over here. Now these are the 2 bolts that you're going to need to remove, and that's going to be the same size as the other side, which is the 8mm Allen key socket. So go ahead and remove these 2 bolts, and same thing just like the other side. You're going to have to remove is going to be, move the camera up a little bit, is going to be the screw here, screw over here, and a little plastic screw that's behind here, and then behind here it's going to be that 10 millimeter bolt. So go ahead and remove all those pieces and remove these 2 bolts, and then let me show you what to do next. Okay, now this is how your frame slider is going to come to you when you order it. It's going to pretty much come in pieces, so you're going to have to put it together. So it's pretty simple, not that hard to put it together. Also, you may want to make sure that you have your blue thread lock, so you can put a little bit of thread lock on this bolt over here. So now to put it together, you want to grab your frame slider. Obviously mine is already scratched up because I did have a few accidents on it already. This is how it looks like on the inside right there. Alright, so before we get to that, let's get our bolt, which is right here. Let's get our spacer or our washer, slide that through, put it through your frame slider. Should come out to the other end. Now get this piece, it's also aluminum, it's hollow. Okay, so we want to make sure it's actually tapered. So there's one end that's bigger and one end that's smaller. As you can see, here's the bigger end, here's the smaller end. You want to make sure that the bigger end goes to the back of the frame slider. Go ahead and slide that through. Alright, so then you got your bracket for your frame slider. Looks like that. Now pretty much this piece is going to go towards the end right over here on that side. But before we do that, let's go ahead and put a little bit of thread lock on the ends of the bolt. So let's go ahead and do that. You want to make sure you do this for both of them. Unfortunately, I was not able to show you that on the other one, but you want to make sure when you watch this video that you do it for both ends. So once you put a little bit of thread lock, you go ahead and thread that in. Well, you can. I'm putting my finger through it over here just to kind of grab a little bit, and once you feel it grab a little bit, go ahead, get your tool and tighten it down as much as you can. You're not going to be able to tighten it down all the way, not until you get the bracket on the bike. Okay, now that you got your 2 bolts removed over here, that's pretty much it right over here. Now what you want to do next is you want to put a little bit of thread lock on each one of these bolts. So let's go ahead and do that. Thread lock on that one, and a little thread lock on this one. Okay, so on this bracket, as you notice, like on the other side, on the bracket we had a little notch here to accommodate the engine bolt. Well, on the left side there is none. Well, the engine bolt's there, but it's actually towards here, which is right there. That's the engine bolt on this side, on the left side. So there is no need for the bolt to be accommodated. So as you can see, it's all flat here. Alright, so now we got our bracket. Let's go ahead and we're going to put the one bolt in. I'm going to start with the top one over here just because it's just a little bit more harder to get to and kind of show you guys, but you know, the bolt is up here, so I'm going to go ahead and start it in. But just like the other side, when you want to put it in, you want to make sure that you get it. You want to make sure that as you're screwing it into the spot that it goes in smooth and not tight. If you do feel it resistance getting it in there, back it out right away and then proceed and do it all over again until you make sure that it goes in smooth. Finger tighten, then we'll put the other bolt in, because you definitely don't want to be cross-threading on the bracket here. Let's see what the best I could do on lighting for you guys as I put the bracket in there. So we're going to go ahead and put the bracket in like so. And once you get it in there, it's, like I said, it's a little hard to show you with the camera, but once you put it in there, go ahead and start tightening the screw by hand. Once you get it finger tight, go ahead and install your other bolt and also do the same thing, finger tight for the time being. Then I'll show you what to do next. Okay, once I got a finger tight, I used the Allen key and I tightened it up as much as I could after that. Alright, I already did both bolts. Now next what we're going to do is we're going to put our torque wrench, and again we're going to tighten these 2 bolts the same thing as we did the other ones at 40 foot-pounds. So go ahead and put your torque wrench in and tighten it down to 40 foot-pounds. Again, this is pretty much how the setup is. When you go ahead and you tighten it down 40 foot-pounds, you should hear a click. There's our click. Alright, so now we know that that's down to 40 foot-pounds, so now we're going to go ahead and do the other bolt. Okay, now that we got both of those bolts tightened down to 40 foot-pounds, next what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and tighten out the bolt that we had put in here. And as you can see, I haven't tightened it down yet because it's still loose. Obviously, since I already had low slide it, I have a little scratch here. I don't want people to see that, so I'm going to put my scratch down towards the bottom. On yours, however, you're going to have brand new ones. And it's up to you on how you want to put it, or it doesn't really matter to you. But if these were brand new for me, I pretty much would like this kind of to be in the center So either I could have the name like facing like this, because the name is on 4 parts. I'll probably just have it towards where they're kind of both side to side like that. Up to you, total preference on how you want to put it, or it really doesn't matter. Okay, so it's gonna go ahead and put your tool inside like that. And like I said, it doesn't have to be tightened that extreme. Like the main bolts, I would say 10 to 20 at the max on pound for torque. So let's go ahead and tighten those down. You're gonna hear a click and you're good to go. Okay, once you're done tightening on that bolt, those 2 bolts, now you're gonna go ahead and put everything back together. Your bolt here, little plastic tab screw over here, your triangle piece, and put everything back. And don't forget your bolt that's right behind here, the 10mm. And that pretty much concludes on how to install the frame sliders. Now again, these are the no cut frame sliders, meaning that you don't need to cut your fairing to install these. And that's particularly why I chose them and why I like them very much, because it's less work for me to do, and I don't have to worry about making a hole on the fairings. And you know, for me, I didn't like that kind of look. But like again, I'll have a link in the description below for both the no cut, which are these, and the cut, which are the ones that have to cut into the fairing. I hope you guys enjoyed the video. Very sorry that it took this long to get the video out to you guys. If you enjoyed the video, please share the video. If you have any friends that also have R3s and is looking to install some frame sliders, please share my video. If you have any questions, leave them in the comments below, and I appreciate you guys watching.